every single time I acquire a business, revenue declines the following year. And yet I've been able to generate millions of dollars in personal wealth doing exactly this. Why? Because I'm acquiring an opportunity to build. I'm not buying momentum. Okay. In this episode, I'm going to sit down with the Burn Your Boats podcast host and break down exactly how I've turned acquiring unsexy businesses into real wealth and how I think is the most overlooked pathway to financial freedom today. Check it out.
Welcome to a really exciting episode of the Burn Your Boats Wealth podcast. I've got a guest today. Quite frankly, I haven't been this excited to bring on a guest since we started the podcast.
Wow.
My
Right
wife is this guest's kind of embarrassing super fan. We welcome Walker Deibel, well-known author of Buy Then Build. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it is the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book of the business acquisition world. So if you have listened to podcasts where people say, well, what book got you started? You know, how did you start in real estate? Well, I picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Well, Walker, I think the same can be said about the hundreds of thousands of people who've read your book and you've impacted and grown their wealth through Buy Then Build. Walker, welcome to the show.
David, thanks so much for having me. What a kind introduction. I'm super excited to be here. And I really enjoyed spending a few days in Colorado getting to know you. So thanks for the invite. Super pumped.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for us. Walker, we've dropped your name an uncomfortable amount of times on the podcast. So to have you here, have you here is it's a genuine honor and have you here. And actually, to your point about meeting you, you're just the most solid, ordinary, funny ass person that you're going to meet on a day-to-day basis as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun here today. We won't grind out a boring episode here. We'll have fun with it. And with that being said, how's your wrists after your speeding down the hills of Breckenridge?
Yeah, so David and I went skiing, and I'm a bit of I'm kind of wired for high risk, and when I hadn't been skiing in about 20 years, and we were just going down for lunch. I'd had a great morning, no spills, and I was like, I'm just gonna bomb it out. And David, I was probably going near 14 miles an hour, and I took a spill, and I just sort of hit my wrist, and it looked like my thumb was broken. I mean, we all sort of were staring at it, going, "Yeah, it looks broken," but I've done nothing. I wore a brace for a while, and it's still a bit sore. I was thinking that this morning, but I don't shake people's hands at the moment. I just fist bump, because it's like it's right in here.
It's very
I'm not sure it's smart. People already are turning this off. They're like, this guy is so dumb. Like, you need his hand. He's got to go to a doctor. But I called the doctor in an Uber, and they were like, "What's your insurance?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm in an Uber. It's in the trunk. Like, can we just schedule?" And she was like, "No, call me back." And I called her back, and it's a voicemail. And I'm just like, whatever. I don't have time for this. So
Yeah.
Let's go.
I'm tougher than this.
Right. Yeah.
Walker,
exactly.
How did you come to write one of the most important business books out there?
David, I want to say like this. It all goes back to, imagine, remember like, 1999 to sort of like 2004, right? This was a key time for me. I graduated college. I had my first job as, a stockbroker. I lived in the Bay Area for a while. Like, entrepreneurship was defined by Silicon Valley, right? And a lot of these big accelerators were coming out countrywide at that time, and everyone was sort of trying to be, teach what was happening in Silicon Valley and just copy and paste it. And, and MBA classes started teaching entrepreneurship right there around like 2000, 2001, 2002. And, I got my MBA in 2002 to 2004. I kind of used that time as a bit of a resume shield to try to start my own business, right? We did that, and it failed, which is just sort of what happens when you start companies, even though we were doing great, and then it doesn't work out. And I'd sort of lightly tried to start a business before that, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, in 2004, I was walking up and down Wydown Boulevard. So St. Louis has one boulevard, and it's sort of, it marries like WashU or Forest Park to downtown Clayton. And there's a lot of joggers and, bike riders and whatever. I was walking with my friend, and I was looking around at these kind of like huge mansions. And like, this is Clayton, Missouri, and it's right next door to Ladue, Missouri. And Ladue is one of the top 10 richest neighborhoods in like the country, if not the world. I don't know. It's really rich. And it's in like, I'm walking around and I'm like, I'm telling my friend Kevin, I'm like, none of these people were like tech entrepreneurs. Like, what
Yeah.
were they
Right.
doing? What were they doing? And so,
Yeah.
they all like, if you're in the Midwest, like it goes all the way back to like the fur trade and like
Yeah.
Listerine and like the fuse and like rowboats, and so
Right.
it's a lot of like
Right.
paper distribution. I met a guy who owned like the piece inside the can light, like the can part of the light.
Wow.
He makes those.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was just like, he was so comfortable. And I was
Yeah.
just like, okay, what's going on here? So I was like, how do I like no one's gonna start one of these old economy businesses that like
Right.
aren't that are just stable and cash flowing and not growing. This is a terrible idea. So it just became to me like, well, I know there's a way to sort of acquire one of these companies. Like, how do I do that? And I just kind of went that direction. And I quickly figured out that there was no information whatsoever on this whole space. And like I'm talking to my MBA professors, they're trying to talk me out of it. They're like, Walker, this is a terrible idea. And search funds were just starting to like come out of Cambridge, Mass, and
Yeah.
it's sort of coming out of Stanford at that time. And I was imagining walking around St. Louis asking people for money to go buy a business, and I'm just like, this is not going to work, and like this is not like I'm not going to be met with open arms on this one.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I think that like there was all of this bad information. It was like subjective information. It was opaque. It was fragmented. And like I was talking to everyone and everyone had a different piece of information, a different read on what was happening. And I was like, this is like an entire capital market that looks really, really boring, that has like immense amounts of cash
Yeah.
pushing out of it. And it's not even like positive economically at the GDP level because you have all these baby boomers driving around in their Lexuses and they've already put all their kids through college and they're
Yeah.
like, I don't want to take on any debt. We're just milking this thing. It was
Right.
literally an empire of cash cows, right? Just
Yeah.
sleepy, invisible cash cows. And I was like, okay, so I got the idea in 2004 to write, buy, then build. Okay. And I thought about writing it. And then I realized a couple of things. One, I hadn't done it. So had I written the book, it would have been like the intern interviewing
Yeah.
people that had done it,
Right.
and it would look really good on like my resume when I was
Fake it
like,
till you make it.
yeah, when I was like
Yep.
30, it'd be like, oh, you wrote a book? Like, wow, that's impressive. But it would, you'd sell like, 500 copies at most or whatever books actually
Yeah.
do. And I was like, if I ever write this book, it's like I need to really write it from experience and I need to define the space. And anything short of that, I'm just not going to do it. By the time I got to, 2013, I had owned my first company for 7 years. I had sold it to a strategic target that I was trying to acquire. And then I started another company that didn't work out because that's what happens. And then I went out and I bought like, more companies. And I was hanging out, like I was in the entrepreneurship circle and I just kept being introduced as this is Walker. He buys and sells companies. And David, it really got under my skin because I was like, you guys don't understand. Like, I'm not like a banker buying and selling companies. I'm an entrepreneur just like you.
Yeah.
It's just that like I don't have some sexy app with no revenue. My revenue is like my
Yeah.
revenue is like 20 times yours, and I'm cash
Yeah.
flowing like 7 figures on the bottom line, and it looks really, really boring to you on the outside, really,
Yep.
really unsexy, right? But like I am in the Coliseum just like you.
Yeah.
I am
Yep.
fighting every day for a new client just like you. I am
Yep.
managing cash just like you. I'm doing capital allocation. I'm managing employees. I'm hiring. I'm firing. I'm leading. I'm doing all of the same fucking things. And it's like the analogy was like all of real estate investing was defined only as ground up construction for like decades. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, there's this little thing called value add where like you buy an existing property and like rehab it. And like everyone's like their minds
Yeah.
are blown, and I'm like, stop, like if like the sexier it is, the more broke you are, okay,
Yeah.
and like
That's right.
the more unsexy it is, the more it's going to cash flow, right? And so I just sort of figured that out, and and it got me so frankly, I had the idea early on. Second, I started getting really angry because all of my friends, I was like, they would buy companies if they understood what I was doing, right? They wouldn't be trying to recreate the
Yeah.
wheel.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand the baby boomers like were retiring. Like I knew this in
You
like
just knew it. It
2000
was just in
and
your
two,
system.
no, in 2010, like I
Yeah.
knew that there was $10 trillion that was going to be
Yeah.
sold by baby boomers by
Yeah.
2030. Like I saw it
Right.
happening. I was like, this is going to be huge. So like, and my, and again, like my professors were just like, this is so dumb, Walker. Like it was just so contrarian. It was so
Yeah.
contrarian that it was so hard to come up with it. And I essentially wrote Buy Then Build partially to make it make sense for myself, partially to explain to my other entrepreneur friends that there was another way, partially because by that time I had done it so many times, and
Yeah.
partially in 2016 on January 1st, the SBA for the first time ever changed a little rule. And the little rule was, hey, Walker, do you remember that first business that you bought, which was like a $8 million book printing company? And the only reason you could buy it was because it had all of this equipment in it because you didn't
Right.
have any money or any collateral, and like you needed this big thing. And so there were these like SaaS companies that were just like
Yeah.
so awesome and
Yeah.
cranking, but
Sexy.
like I
Yeah.
can't touch it. But like I could buy a book printing company because the bank loved it, and they were selling for
Yeah.
low multiples, and I'm like,
Yeah.
great. And so that's what I bought. But in 2016, they were like, look, as long as you sign a personal guarantee, I don't care if you have collateral. I don't care if the business has collateral. And all of a sudden, service
Wow.
Yeah.
businesses
Game
became
changer.
completely unlocked. Like, so I bought I think I bought four companies that year. And it was like, no one knows what's happening right now. Like, it was just
Yeah.
crazy. So, so that was the thing. And then ultimately it took me a long time to write it. It really took me like 4.5 years to write it. But 2016 was when I really was like, I got to get this out. And then October 2018 is when it got published, but I sat on it for 9 months after even my publishers said it was done. Like they're like, it's done. I'm like, not yet. And I still like,
Yeah.
I rewrote 2 more chapters. I'm like, all right, now it's done. I waited 9 months because I was like, someone's going to read this and like all of my faulty logic is in black and white. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's there
or
forever.
yeah, or right. Or someone's going to read it and get all excited and buy a business. And that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Like that's
Yeah.
crazy. Like, am I just like hardwired for risk somehow in a
Yeah.
way that what if someone does this? Like it's crazy. And then I realized a couple of things. One, every single book ever written on entrepreneurship is like, yo, dog, quit your job, leave the walled palace, take no supplies with you, and just like start a business from scratch and give all your equity away.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that is also crazy. And then you got Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is like, yo, dog, like, take all these PGs on, real estate assets,
Yeah.
and run it on the side until you can replace your paycheck and then quit. And then one day you can, buy as big like I am or whatever. So it's just like every other thing out there. It's like every single, force has a light and a dark side, right?
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like there will be an undercurrent. There will be broken eggs. There will be mistakes that happen. But ultimately, everyone needs to know what's happening right now because it's amazing. And I'm like this young man in St. Louis who apparently is the only person that knows about this entire
Yeah.
capital market.
Well, you know what?
That's the story,
Walker.
David. Sorry, yeah.
Walker, when do you remember back when they had like the DVD commentary where people like the actors would talk about their shows? I feel like
Awesome.
you need to be that guy for the yo dog. This is what I mean on Rich Dad Poor Dad. We need the DVD extras, man. I need you to just go review like a bunch of different books, and I would pay for that before I'd buy the book. I'm like, I don't care about what Kiyosaki says. Just give me the
That's
yo
so
dog
funny.
version.
That's
Uh,
great.
Yo, dog.
That's great.
Well,
I'm actually launching that service right now on this podcast.
That's
It's a
it, man.
membership. It's
Oh,
only
we
19.
got an announcement, Walker.
Yeah, it's only
huh?
$9.99 a month. Yeah. Reach out to David and Clark
I
for
love it, man.
for
You're
the
getting
link.
things, you're getting it started right out of the gate. Walker, I've heard Buy Then Build was a 14-year project, right? And everyone just sees the 2018, 2000, it's the
Totally.
biggest book, and it's like that's all they see. They don't see the
Mhm.
14 years behind it of
That's right.
like tears and blood and sweat and everything. I'm
Yeah.
curious, how many people were punching you in the face saying your professors, they were like, this is a horrible idea. Like how long did it take before people stopped saying you're crazy and they're like, hold on. Tell me more. What are you talking about? I'm just curious.
It's
How
all about
long? How
it
many
was all
people?
about finding the market, right? You know, going back, like I think just so many people just are safe or have like, you know, I mean that's why it's contrarian, right? You know what I'm saying? So I think it's what I say. I think that to your point, let me start here. You know, people read Buy Then Build and they're like, "Great, this is amazing," right? But the truth is like I have millions of dollars and over a decade of experience and multiples of my net worth and personally guaranteed debt and like staring really hard things in the face and like big entrepreneur challenges that I thought were going to wipe me out. But it also led to, you know, making seven figures a few
Right.
times over. You
Yeah.
know, so it's you know, I say it, I believe I say it in the book is like doing acquisition entrepreneurship is actually the most engaged life possible, right?
Yeah.
And I think people translate that accidentally to like it's the best life. And I just mean it's like you're getting out of the matrix and all of a sudden like now you're Neo and you have to actually fight the real life beasts, not
Right.
the imaginary beasts, you know, of like your
Yeah.
day job or whatever it is. Like there's a whole nother thing that going on.
Yeah.
And when you take on the debt to buy these companies, you know, I think that the way that I always thought about it was, well, this is all these startups are giving away their equity, and like the whole reason you do it is for the equity, right? So
Right.
it's like I'm the only thing I have is this equity, and then whenever the businesses don't go well, and I've been in a lot of these rooms, the entrepreneurs are like, all right, guys, like we got like 90 days of burn rate left, like start looking
Yeah.
for jobs, and it's like, well, why don't we all just give the money back that's left? But it's because it's like if we already have given up, like just give
Right.
the money back. Like this is where we are, right? But you don't. You sort of act, right? Like it's still going, and you're spinning
Yeah.
the plates and saying the things, and then you're like, yeah, it didn't work out. Thanks for investing in me. And it's like to me that was silly. And it was like, okay, so when you take the debt, it's like you are writing the check that day. You owe that money, right? And in exchange, you get 100% of the equity of this business. So it's 100% upside to you. And as you pay down that debt, you get that equity buildup, right? So you have these real estate economics all of a sudden at play. When I sold my first business for seven figures, I actually sold it for, like I owned it during the Great Recession. It was like a terrible time, okay? Terrible. We were like furloughing people. I had to lay off like 10-20% of my employees. It
Oh,
was so hard. Like it was a book printing company, and a year after I bought it, the Kindle came out. And a year after
oh,
that, the
Oh,
iPad came out. And then bookstores were going out of business, and the newspapers were trying to take our customers as they were going under. It was terrible. I sold it for like almost exactly the same for what I bought it for. The month after, I paid off all the debt. And that was my first seven-figure exit. And I was like,
yeah.
oh my God. Right? It was like this light
Yeah.
bulb moment. It was like,
yeah.
imagine if you actually add building to this, you
I
know?
want, yeah. I want to
Wow.
stop right there.
Yeah.
We've got to
Okay.
stop right there
Cool.
because that's what people are here
Yeah.
for. That's the meat and potatoes right there. You buy this building. When you buy, excuse me, you buy this business. When you buy a building,
Yeah.
it has, in general, about a 25-year runway to pay itself off,
Right.
more or
Right.
less, right?
Sure. Yeah.
When you buy a business,
Mm-hmm.
you generally will buy it with anywhere from 2 times gross revenue to our EBITDA, I
What
should
if you're going?
say,
Yeah. Yeah. EBITDA.
SDE.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we'll go with EBITDA. So we'll go 2 times EBITDA up to maybe 9 or 10 times for a really big business, but
Sure.
on average 4 to 6.
I'd
Two,
say
two to three.
2.5 to 4x
Okay.
SDE. That's SDE, not
Yeah.
EBITDA. Because I
Okay.
don't because
So
there's
let's
SDE,
clarify
there's
these terms.
EBITDA, adjusted EBITDA, all these different things.
Let's
Revenue.
clarify the terms so that we can talk
Sure.
about them for the rest of the show.
Okay.
Walker, tell me what SDE is so the listeners understand what SDE is. I read your book, so I know.
Yeah, thanks. So SDE is seller's discretionary earnings. And the concept here is, for those familiar with EBITDA, it's a step beyond that in that
Yep.
it's saying like, if I own this black box that is this business, how much money is this black box giving out that I, as the owner of this black box, can use discretionarily? So I can take it out as salary, I can reinvest it in the business, and I can pay down principal and interest.
Got it.
Okay, so it's all of the cash flow that this black box is generating
All right.
as the owner operator.
Yeah, after taxes, after everything, right? So that's why I prefer SDE than anything else, because it's actually the cash flow. It's
Well,
what
it's
real
not.
estate investors would understand as being the net cash flow.
Okay, copy. Let's use that. Yeah.
Let's use that. Let's use SDE. So SDE is the amount of cash flow that it throws
Well,
off.
if I may, David, not to interrupt, the thing
Yeah.
is whether you're using SDE or adjusted EBITDA or EBITDA really just depends on which market you're playing in. So
Sure.
SDE really defines the sort of Main Street market, and that's definitely a sub $5 million acquisition, which by the way is like 99% of all acquisitions, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then you've got up to definitely about I would say the top range would be 25 million.
Yep.
But really, north of 20 million, you're not going to see, you know, SDE used anymore. It switches to
Yeah.
adjusted EBITDA, and then
Yeah,
public.
no, I understand
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
then we're into
So,
more corporate acquisitions and stuff
yeah,
like
so
that.
let's use SDE, but let's keep in mind we're probably talking about the sub $10 million acquisition space, as long as we're using that.
Yeah, let's use SE because
Okay.
it's the audience here that's listening to it is probably
Yeah.
going to be more comfortable with it. So
Right.
SE, seller discretionary income, how much money when all is said and done does
Yep.
the seller get to play with? Did he get to take it home? He can invest it in the business. He can pay off his loan. He can do whatever, or she can do whatever they want.
The
Right.
buyer.
So
Yeah.
when you're buying the business,
Yep.
you're buying it, going to buy it anywhere between 2, 4, 6 times that number. I've just told you, with a building, you're buying it with probably a 25-year runway.
Yeah.
With a business, you're buying it with what, Walker?
I mean, the loan will amortize over 10, right?
Yeah.
So 10 years.
But more
Yeah.
often than not, these buyers, these acquisition entrepreneurs will pay that debt off at an accelerated rate because businesses throw off more money. Yes or no?
Maybe. I think no. I think that in theory it feels like you're going to, but you never do. I mean, so the reason why I was able to pay off that first loan in 7 years was because it was a traditional commercial loan. So it was a 7-year amort. That's
Got
the
it.
only reason it was paid off, and it was heavy.
Got it.
It was expensive.
Yeah.
I paid myself $0 one year. And it
Yeah.
wasn't because I was like Steve Jobs getting like $1 billion in stock over here on the side. It literally was like I'm just paying the debt, and I didn't have enough money to not make any money that year. It's just there's no other choice. So
Yeah.
Jim
Yeah, yeah.
Collins, the second best author of all time, Jim
Yes.
Collins. He's
See what you did
he's a
there? I
yeah
like
yeah
that.
he's a climber. Thanks, Clark. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
we know, Jim.
Yeah, he's a climber, and so he likes to say, like, or I've heard him say, I should say, that like if you are staring up at like this just hugely intimidating climb that's harder than anything you've ever done before, but like there's a nice little path back to your car. Guess what? You go back to your car.
Every
But
time.
like if there is no other way out and you have to climb it, what do? You climb it. That's
That's right.
acquisition entrepreneurship, right? That's what happened. And so anyway, just to pull it back, so that was a 7-year loan. It was a very heavy principal and interest payment, but normally it's 10 years. And here's what I'm gonna say is like they pay a lot of it cash flows heavily compared to what you paid for it when compared to real estate. And right now, I see a lot of real estate investors moving into businesses, and I think there's 2 reasons behind this. Okay, the first is that we see it over and over again. Okay, with like stock pickers and index funds, right? They're like, okay, I cover growth stocks in this middle size segment, and then all of a sudden, growth middle size stocks start underperforming. So when the guy across the hall who does the large cap stable stocks,
Yeah.
like he'll walk over there when he goes to lunch and look at what he's buying, and he'll buy some of that in his fund, right? And it's like, well, now I'm going to go buy that. So there's a scope creep there. Now the same thing's happening in real estate. One, the last like probably 2-3 years has been like the hardest time to raise money in real estate since like the Great Recession.
Yeah.
And so all these people that like this was what they did, they're all of a sudden having a really hard time. Two, they think in terms of cap rate. And so they'll look at like, okay, I'm going to buy this building for, maybe on the high end, 10% cap rate, 6% cap rate, whatever it is. And so cap rate would be I pay 100% and I get, 6% in cash every year. And that's like
Yep.
my revenue. And then they look at businesses and they're like, what the hell? This is, if they think in terms of cap rate, they're like,
Yeah.
this is like a 25 to 33% cap
Yeah.
rate.
That's right.
But you need to understand that it doesn't, I'm seeing a lot of real estate lessons being pulled into this asset class, and it's, I believe, incorrect. For
Got it.
example, let me just throw one right down the
Yes.
the chute, which is you make money when you buy. Not in this space. Not in this space. You make money
Right.
when you sell, right? Like
Yeah.
the appreciation on a building is predetermined. It's like 2% a year plus or minus
Right.
1%. All you have is the equity buildup, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And like you
That's
have a
it.
hard asset that no matter what happens is always going to be worth something. Okay. It's a real asset. It's called real estate. Okay.
Yeah.
In businesses, the value is actually completely intangible. Even when it
Yeah.
looks like it's tangible, it's not. It's people, it's processes, it's SOPs, it's customers, it's the way we do things, it's how we deliver, it's leadership, it's all of the things inside the animal that is making this thing move. And there's a lot more risk because it's like when you say to me, "Hey Walker, there is a 3,000 square foot single family home in the zip code 63105." I already have like an estimate of
Yeah.
what that house is going to say for because I
Yeah.
just
Right.
know the zip code, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of assumptions in there. Like I'm assuming it has a kitchen. I'm assuming that there are like there's
Oh
actual
my
like
God, that's
toilets in the
good.
bathroom. I'm assuming that like it's finished, like.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
buy a business, you get in there and then you're like, okay, so when I buy this, the owner is the one who plays golf with all the customers, and then like the key employee like is the kitchen. And
Yeah.
like is that person gonna leave? Like there's a lot going on. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. And so people like the worst email I get is like, hey man, like should I buy this business? Dude, I get like 20 of these a week. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like,
Right.
and then they throw over a business and I'm just like,
Right.
I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
I don't know what like I
What you
don't
like.
there's no way that I can begin to unpack that in like a email response, like glance at it and be like, yeah, it looks good. Like, no,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's
What
so
So
much going into that. Yeah.
Walker, what is interesting is that like when I start seeing real estate people sell businesses like it's a wholesale deal to your
Right.
point, and it's
Right.
like, well, hold on. A, you
Right.
know nothing about this, and you're selling it like it's a cap rate real estate deal where I can just passively hire a contractor and all will be well in the world.
Yeah.
And so it's funny to your point because I see that a lot with like sub two deals, right? Like sub two popped up after 2022 when interest rates started going up, and that was the flavor of the day. And you had a bunch of people that had never done a sub two deal. And now what we're starting to see, I'm starting to see it on message boards and groups where it's like the buyer, guess what? The taxes went up. Guess what? The insurance went up. Guess what? That zero cash flow is now negative 500, and all of a sudden it's not such a great deal anymore. And I feel like we evolved from the sub in being a real estate guy, we evolved from the sub two that flamed out, right? That party is done. Let's go buy a business because to your point, you can get it a 28 cap, right, instead of a 6 cap. What do you see? Like, what's the future hold maybe in the next year or so where a bunch of real estate guys get into it, looking at it like a real estate deal, and they're like, holy shit, this is not a wholesale deal.
Yeah. I think that, we touched on, I think there obviously will be a undercurrent. Like when Rich Dad Poor Dad came out and, everyone and their mom ran out and bought, um, real estate, and they're swinging hammers on the weekend or whatever, a lot of them learned some really hard lessons, and
Yeah.
we will see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what I'll say to this is it also goes into, one of the things that we try to do at Acquisition Lab, right? So I like ultimately when I finally got comfortable with like, okay, I'm gonna release buy then build, and we're gonna go do this, and I'm really trying to write like the seminal book on this topic, right? That was the effort that I tried, right? So it wasn't on accident. Now the thing was that I realized that my target market was like competent people. And let me explain. Like it's like middle managers at
Yeah.
whatever organization that like want to go out on their own, but like they have a family. They're not going to just be like, yo, I'm starting a business with no product market fit,
Yeah.
and or like, hey, I'm an engineer and I work in manufacturing and I just realized I spent my last 25 years making that other chick rich who owns the company, right? Or like, hey, I'm gonna go out and be an entrepreneur and I'm already comfortable taking that risk. But wait, look at this option. Like these were the people I was targeting.
Yeah.
And that was very deliberate. And what happened was that by 2021, I mean, it was what do you call it when like the trash is on fire? I mean, it's like it's
dumpster fire.
yeah,
Dumpster fire.
dumpster fire. Yeah, I mean, it was just like, oh my God. And so at Acquisition Lab, I actually when we built it, we launched it in 2019. Well, I launched it frankly by myself with cohort 1 in 2019, and then Chelsea came on for like cohort 2 in February of 2020, like, and then COVID was announced right away. It was pretty awesome. But the thing was I said, Chelsea, here's the deal. Usually when you start in it, by the way, Acquisition Lab is our accelerator for helping people buy businesses. I read by them, build, hey, I want to go do it. Okay. But like I said to her, I said, listen, when you start an industry, usually you just start one. And then a bunch of other people come in and it gets crowded. And then someone comes in at the end and says, oh, we're actually like the best one. And they have all these metrics. Okay.
Right.
And I said, we're actually the best one as we're starting this. And so we're going to give away a ton of revenue to people that probably shouldn't be spending any money, giving it to people that probably can't really help them. Right. And I'm just, being honest. So it's like, so it's going to feel weird. Okay. And to this day, we're now at cohort 56. We now have a 1,000 members. Okay. We have a 37% conversion rate from member to actual acquisition. They bought over $500 million in small businesses. We take no kickbacks. We take no, we're not like, give me a point on this loan.
Yeah,
None of that shit. We take no equity. We don't, nothing. We don't invest in these companies. We don't do anything like, there's no weird economics. It's a one-time fee, lifetime access.
Yeah.
That's how we built it. Okay. Because I want people coming back when they get into the valley of the search. You already bought it. Come on back. We have, 6 speakers. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to sell Acquisition Lab. The point is that I was like, this is going to get loud. And because it's a really sexy topic to be unsexy, like, like cash flow is the new black, right? And, boring is the new black,
Yeah.
And, so, and so now that we have 1,000 members, we just went back and looked, we have 3,500 people that we interviewed that wanted to join, not that we were selling, that wanted to join, that we did not extend an invitation to enroll. So we're a truly vetted community, and it's the little thing that makes the big difference in terms of results. Now, Walker, what was the question that was asked? It was, are there going to be people that go out there and make mistakes? Of course.
Yeah.
But the thing is like the way that we run it is, I sort of like to call it, I Mr. Miyagi their ass. I get them in, and and it's like if they can get in, then they can do it. We know they can do it, right? And so, but I want to try to talk them out of it. Frankly, I don't say that publicly, but I'm saying it right now. That's actually what I do. I kind of try to talk them out of it, because if you still get passed, then you're like in, and I'm like, you're in. Then they're like, I want to learn karate. I'm like, paint the fence. I want to learn karate. Wax the car. I want to learn karate. Okay, you're in. Let's go kick some ass.
I love it. I'm going to start off here, right, with my next question, right?
Yeah.
So you write this book, right?
Yeah.
And to Clark's point, to your point, takes 14 years to write this book. But the 14 years is you doing it. You're learning how to write the book, right? You get it out there. You start getting the attention and the readership from the book. You set up Acquisition Lab. Acquisition Lab, for anybody out there who's listening at this point in time, Acquisition Lab is an environment where you go and you do your training, right? You read the book, you're left with questions. Acquisition Lab is a community, a acquisition entrepreneur community where you go in, Walker reference cohorts. Cohorts are different groups that start at different times, and they go through that training as a group together, and they support each other. And by the time they're done, they will then have the knowledge, the know-how, and the platforms and the search environment to know who they are, what they're looking for, right? Because a lot of people just say, oh, I like, writing books. No. You're not in the writing books business, right? You're in a different business. So most businesses, you think what the business is, but it's something completely different. The actual business is marketing, or the actual business is, very few businesses are the label on the can, as we both know. And then most people start off going, I want this business or that business, not knowing what they want, who they are, what they're good at. So my question then, you got nearly 1,000 people. Think about that.
We just hit 1,000. Yeah.
That's nuts. And a lot of people will come to you at a particular juncture in their life. Very few people are going to come to you when everything's going smashing at their W2.
That's right. There's some level of I'm stuck or I've had a realization. Obviously, it's not like I'm getting promoted 6 times this year and I'm calling, Walker. Like that's not what's happening.
They come to you
keep
when
going.
there's a sense of
something.
They come to you when there's a sense of yearning for change. It doesn't. I didn't say it smacks with desperation.
Yeah,
but
correct.
They're coming to you when there's a sense of yearning, and they. I need to name drop a little bit here, Walker, but Cody Sanchez and Alex Hermosi would not be known today had you not written this book. I'm sure of it. You wrote the book. They're making it sexy, right? But they're students of yours.
I met this guy. I was at MMT Mastermind Talks, and we had this little breakout session by the pool, and we're going around introducing ourselves, and the guy goes, "Oh, I know you," and I was like, "Oh, great," and he goes, "Yeah, you wrote Buy Then Build, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you know Alex Hermosi?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know Alex Hermosi. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know who he is." Yeah. And he was like, "So I was Alex Hermosi's college roommate." And I was like, "Whoa, dude, tell me what he was like in college." Anyway, we had a great conversation, but he said that he was reading Buy Then Build and was talking to his roommate about like, I got to figure out how to buy businesses. And when you actually look at what he's doing, that's what he's doing in the background, right? It's like, line. It's really awesome. So
it's a straight line.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I can't wait to meet him one day. Yeah,
I want to get the question in. The question is what kind of people do well after they buy the business?
Oh, interesting.
After they buy. So we know the people who read it. We know the people who go through the trainings. We know the people who join the communities. They're all excited. We did an episode of a podcast yesterday, and we were talking about this bell curve of excitement. So you're doing the reading, you're meeting Walker, you're in the cohort, you're in the group. It's all lovely. You identify the business, you buy the business, you acquire the business. It's all exciting. And then holy shit balls, I've got to run the business.
I got to tell you,
and it doesn't have a kitchen.
Yeah. So someone said to me like, what's the first thing you do after, this was last week. They said, what's the first thing you do after you buy a business? And I said, I throw up.
Right.
And I was in Chicago and I met this guy who bought I can't remember what company it was, but every morning, so they close the night before and he walks in first day. And he was a recent MBA, like, maybe even like a traditional search fund style acquisition. And every day the management team meets in the conference room, and he was like, "All right, guys, give me a minute." And he walked to his corner office, and he was like, "I went into the bathroom in my office, and I shut the door, and I just had like violent diarrhea. Like I was just like so nervous. I couldn't believe what happened, And he's like, so I pulled myself together. I did some deep breathing. I splashed water on my face, and I walked in the conference room, and that's the minute I realized that the wall of the conference room also was the wall that bordered my bathroom." And I'm like, welcome to the club. This is exactly the right reaction.
That's
this
good.
is exactly the right reaction, right? So I think it's a lift, right? So who does well in these types of businesses? I would say there's a lot of different combinations, David. I wish I could give you a silver bullet. And so I'm having to distill a lot of information in my head as I'm talking. And so on the one hand, look, you've got the 4 quadrants in Buy Then Build, right? The AE matrix. And it's like, eternally profitable business, turnaround, high growth, and platform company. And I mean platform company, not in the sense of how private equity refers to it, but basically a business that aligns really well with your skill and ability and what it is that you want to be doing, right?
Yeah.
Because I think what a lot of people miss is that we all sit around, and especially first-time buyers, you sit around and like you look at a business and you're reading it and like you look at the P&L and you're trying to understand the cash flow and all these other things. But the first thing that happens when you buy that business is you're like cutting the head off of the animal that is the business, and you're throwing it away. And then you're becoming the head of the animal. So it's like, when you sign a contract and like in all big bold cap letters, it's like historical performance is no indication of future. It's like that literally is exactly what's happening. Like it is sort of a general directional this way kind of a thing, but it now becomes yours to improve or not. And I think that especially a lot of the social media, they're sort of like doing the buy then chill version. It's like hey, buy a laundromat that requires no work because it's actually real estate, and like hire a manager and then peace out to the beach and just collect checks or whatever. It's like, well, sure. I mean, we can, that actually is a model. And if you call me and say that you're going to roll up laundromats, I just need you to know it's the 2,000th person this week that is telling me you're going to do that. It's not an original idea. It's just easy to sell on the internet. So
And even still, I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
Even if this roll up laundromats, what about the laundromat that went on fire last night? What about the one that just was vandalized in the other? Like, there's no such thing as a business that runs itself.
No, I mean, no, not there's not. And I really look at this as active. Like this is a very active game.
Yeah.
You know, you can get passive, you can get there, but it's sort of like getting a job at Microsoft and being CEO at the same time. Like it's just like
Yeah.
you have to like work there for a while. You have to like
Yeah.
do things in a career before you're at the top.
Yeah.
Right. So it's no different here. So the thing is when you buy a business, even though it's active, you're getting yourself in the right lane. But
Yeah.
you still have to build your career in the right lane, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And so by the time like, you know, like I now have a business that I bought 10 years ago. There's now no debt on it, and I do have a manager in place, and I work as like the chairman, right? We've got a monthly meeting, and we meet in person quarterly, and that's what's going on, you know? And you know, like I'll even admit that I'm considering selling it because I'm not active in it anymore. Like I don't know what's going to
Wow.
happen. Like now
Yeah.
like, you know, what if like so being an absentee owner is just sort of like stacking risk on spinning plates, right? Your question was who does well after
Yeah.
they buy a company?
That's right.
I'm going to
Yeah.
say three things, okay? One, it's someone that buys an eternally profitable business, which means that it's going to be very low growth, but just cash flows consistently. I want you to think like, you know, corporate window washing, you know, maybe, you know, commercial cleaning, maybe, you know, snow plowing, like this kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, pool cleaning, whatever it is, like just something where like the growth year over year is going to be like zero, but
Yeah.
like I've got a lot of downside protection.
Yeah.
Number two is going to be the person that is able to correctly align you know, what it is that they bring to the table as a CEO with the opportunity that the business is providing. Okay. So take, for example, I'm just going to say a hypothetical. You know, I'm really good at, you know, building, you know, direct sales, you know, B2B sales teams. And I find a business that, you know, is really tuned in, you know, in terms of, you know, consistency of delivery of product and like has all of the right people on the production side, you know, and really the next step is we're just primed and ready to scale. And that's what I bring to the table because no one else had that skill set in there already because there was only like 24 people that worked there, right? Or whatever. And then the last one is going to be, you know, whoever can sort of minimize the J curve, right? So, and I think this is ultimately where you really start to understand that this is an entrepreneurship practice, which is the J curve means like every single company I've ever bought ever in history, which is a lot at this point. Every single year, the year after I buy it, revenue is lower than the year I
Right.
bought it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't scare me. I anticipate it. I don't even necessarily model it. I do model it myself. I stress test everything, but it's like you
Right.
just like for whatever reason, like you just know, like sometimes you can look at it and be like, oh, this is the best year they've had in 25 years of business, and that's why they're going to sell. You know, like
Yeah.
it's not hard. Like things just kind of fall into place when it's a good time to sell, and it doesn't make me scared because it's sort of like, yeah, they're primed out, which is why they're going to sell it. Duh. Like they need a
Yeah.
reason to sell, and like this is a good year for them to sell. Guess what? I want the asset, and I'm going to own it for 10 years, right? You know, at least or whatever, 7 to 30, whatever it is. So it's like so when you get in there and the J curve obviously means I need to reinvest in the company to build, you know, whatever's happening next, you know, in the
Yeah.
business. And
That's
so
right.
if you can leverage your own sweat rather than your own money or use them in a coincided kind of way to minimize the downside needed for the upside. Okay, that's gonna be the answer to that. If that did you follow that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Okay, great.
you're alluding to the person who's most aligned with the business itself and is willing to fully immerse themselves
Yes,
and grow the
it's
business
really that's it. You
and
have to
provide that, like get in there, roll their sleeves up and get freaking involved.
That's right. That's right. So when I bought the printing company, I knew that, you know, offset book printing was stable, if not clearly starting to decline. This was 2006. Okay. But what was happening was really interesting. There was this little company that sold books online and nothing else, and it was called Amazon.com, right? And Amazon.com, if you remember, was just a bookstore.
Yeah.
What they really were doing was they were providing an avenue for self-publishing that had never actually occurred before, and so new titles were exploding.
Hmm.
And what happened was it was all an instrument of there's something called digital book printing, which is essentially not ebooks, digital book printing, which is like exalted Xerox machines, okay, for commercial use. So I bought the company, and then within a year, I knocked down a bunch of walls in the pre-press area, which was now kind of outdated, and I signed leases on 3 printers, and then I bought a small bookbinder, and all of a sudden, we just went to all of our customers and said, "Listen, all of those titles that are out of print because you feel like you need to print like 5,000 of them to get the per unit price down that you make
Yeah.
money on the unit, okay? But now you're not, now they're out of print because you
Yeah.
you don't have enough demand. Give us all of those." And
Wow.
so
Hmm.
I put that together, and then I walked out to about 125 of our customers, and within 18 months it was, a quarter of our business. It was like,
Wow.
Wow.
yeah, and so that's what actually led to me being able to keep revenue the same during the Great Recession and during this major. I mean, there was
Amazing.
like 37 printing companies a week going out of business. I
Wow.
mean, it was a terrible time, and it was like
And
our
here you are growing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were flat anyway, and
You're keeping your head above water.
revenue was the same.
Yeah.
And we had higher margins on the digital stuff, which was interesting. But like, I remember, I would meet up with my banker once a quarter, just because these were the good old days when, like, banking was still kind of like
Versatile.
valuable. Yeah, yeah. And he would
Like a
buy me a
holiday.
steak sandwich, and so I would also just do it so I could eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd go out there, and I remember I would always take my financials and just show them right at the beginning of the conversation. And it was like year over year we were flat. And I just remember him saying, like, "Well, flat's the new growth model." And he
Yeah.
threw his head back and laughed, and then we ate steak sandwiches. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, like if that's what we're doing, like." So it was a different time. And so what's the point is that, like, it didn't cost anything but, some leases and some effort to
Yeah.
completely redefine the business, and I think
Amazing, isn't
that,
it?
yeah. And so, I was able to limit the J curve because I didn't need to go out and, invest like $2 million in some kind of
Yeah.
infrastructure. It's just all about get to work, use your shoe leather and go, kind
And
of.
this is the perfect time for me to jump in.
Okay.
There's 2 parts to this. The
Yep.
book is called Buy. A lot of people spend most of their podcast time, as
Yep.
we have just done, on the buy side.
Yep.
But then it's called Build.
Yep.
Buy, then build.
Yep.
It is my understanding. You've got all of these businesses that are being sold. Just drive down the road. I do it with my kids. You got the dry cleaners. You've got the food store. You've got this. You've got that. You've got every obscure business. You got the HVAC guy. You've got the irrigation person. You've got the plumber. Everything you spend money on, right, is
Mhm.
boring. Most of it is boring. How much money do I spend on exciting businesses is almost irrelevant, right? But the bottom line is that a lot of these businesses, they're being sold because they are boring, and because they are 55 to 75-year-old lifetime entrepreneurs that built these businesses up. We'll just take a dry cleaner, right?
Mhm.
The build part, buy then build. You've just told me how you built the book business, right? The book printing business. You
Mhm.
physically changed the business model. But I think the lowest hanging fruit is that most of these business owners, Walker, just don't know shit about marketing. They don't
Ah.
know how to market them. So just that in itself, the plumbing company, we just use a plumbing company. Clark's just set up a plumbing company, right? And it's
Mhm.
the plumber will give his shirt away because he doesn't know the first thing about marketing. Tell me, is the build part, is the super flex? Go in, buy a boring business, and then just layer in, hyperactive marketing around it that the previous owner did zero of.
Okay. So yes, and there's different ways to do this. And I believe that, ultimately today, we look at, the iPhone, and it's not a phone. Remember the phone? It's not a
Yeah,
phone at all.
Yeah.
It's like software and hardware combined to build
yeah,
something totally unique. Tesla is the same way. It's not a car. It's like
Right.
it's both a car and a computer. Like it's this. And so I actually think that, sort of two answers. One, looking at, what I would like to see, the biggest opportunity over the next, say, 5 years is buying the infrastructure of these old economy businesses and really introducing and hammering in the new economy models.
Yeah.
And so it could be as simple, to your point, as like, okay, we have no reviews on Google. We need to change that starting right now. And now
Yeah.
we're going to do online marketing. And now we're going to, maybe we go out and, build, I mean, Chris Hoffman has a following on Twitter now, and he bought an HVAC company. Like,
Yeah.
Go start a following talking about, smart shit or whatever. I mean, I talked to Chris. I know Chris well. He's here
Yeah.
in St. Louis, and like he did a lot of work before he even started talking. So please,
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
go do
Yeah.
it first before you start talking, please, for the love of
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. Take 14 years to write the book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, so there's online marketing, and then I think the big one that obviously is going to come out that seems to continue to just be like this Sistine Chapel moment of almost connecting, but not
Yeah.
quite there, is AI.
Of
Right.
course.
And so, so
Yeah.
of course, right. So it's like, we're going to have, AI running the books and dispersing the trucks and, running the accounting and, doing the customer service and scheduling and whatever. And so I think that it's also like, on that point, let's just say that I think that business ownership might actually be the single safest fucking thing out there because of all the people that
Not
are going
wrong.
to probably lose their jobs
Yeah.
because of this. Because it's like, so, if you look at, I did a talk a couple months ago, and I really was just sort of like, all right, look, like I was talking to this very elevated audience, and they really were people that, had, already sort of reached a certain amount of wealth in life, and they
Yeah.
were paying
Yeah.
a lot of money for,
Yeah.
frankly, deals that I could give them for free, but whatever.
Yeah. Right.
But
Not
whatever.
your business.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And so, I talked to them like, look, like if you really reverse engineer the people that, have just gotten extreme outsized returns, okay, what they do is they just right back to this J curve. They buy bigger and then they reinvest heavier.
Yeah.
Right? Back to the entrepreneurship thread. Okay?
Yeah.
Like it's like so, and what happens is they ultimately build three engines. Okay. And the first one is the leadership engine. Okay, kind of to your point. It's like, hey, okay, we're going to, and I don't want to sound like a, Manhattan banker when I say this, but like, I'm not going to bring in like institutional leadership, but I'm going to bring in like more professional leadership. Like who's done this before? And let's bring in leadership that mirrors where we're trying to go, right? Instead of like, hey, I'm just going to stay, a $4 million, was your example? Dry cleaning company and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
It could be plumbing.
Yeah,
Dry
yeah,
cleaning.
plumbing. Four
Choose-
million. So if I have a $4 million plumbing company, because a plumbing company could very much be $4 million. So it's like a $4 million revenue company. That's the team. But like, if I really want to bring in like the person that can really lead this group to a different thing, it might not be me, right? But like, I can engineer that deal and invest in that person and probably give them some equity and invest hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to bring them in. And now we're going to expand to multiple cities, and we're going to put SOPs in place, and we're going to create a training program, and we're going to bring in guys right out of wherever, and we're going to train them up, and we're going to have a very clear program on how they increase their own pay, because people they don't want to wait like they used to. Not that they ever did. It's just that now, it's like I need to know what I need to do today to get 75 cents more on my paycheck next week.
Right.
Like you start creating these kinds of programs and all of that, and then you weave in the strategic expansion that goes with it, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever that means, but it's like you've got these three engines of, the capital deployment and the leadership, enhancement and the strategic expansion, and all of those together, are the thing that really elevate the whole machine. Now, I want to be very careful for anyone listening to this. I bought my first company when I didn't have two pennies to rub together. Okay. And I put my I always say, like, please don't run out there and try to buy a company with no money. Like, if you put skin in the game, all of a sudden the C's part. If you're like, oh, I saw on Instagram, I can just use 100% seller financing and put no skin in the game and like what, and I don't do that. Like, just stay at work. Like, please go get a job until you have 100,000, in net worth to do this. And so you need to put money in, you need to put your life in, and you need to go take a big personally guaranteed loan. Now, once you do that, you're going to make 1 to 5 million bucks. Okay. Just by bootstrapping your acquisition. Okay. What I just talked about is, really for people that, have moved farther along in their career or in their skill set or in their wealth, that are able to actually go out and now, potentially buy, a 15 or $20 million, something with 2, 3 million bucks minimum in terms of adjusted EBITDA coming out of a business already, right? That is
I
now
think
primed to launch in a different way.
I want to make sure that everyone heard exactly what you said.
Thank you.
You only get to hire the skill. You only get to bring in the leadership. You only get to bring in the high level marketing and, implement the new AI capabilities if the company is making enough money to pay for these things in the first place.
That's correct. That's
And
correct.
and so
Yeah.
if you have, I have an analogy, Walker, that's very similar that we beat on about here in the real estate world.
Mm.
So many investors will start off with buying some cheap C-class stuff with quote unquote higher cash flow
Yep.
because it appears it's manageable. Oh, I bought this thing for 100 grand. It is this case. People come in and they start buying these cheapo properties and they always live to regret it.
Yeah.
But look, people start off buying business and they take the cheapest business they can buy. And then they end up buying themselves a job.
Interesting. And there's
They
nothing wrong
and
with buying yourself a job at all. Like it's literally the best way to get started, I believe, right?
yeah.
And people want to talk about how it's not bad. And I'm back to, and the smart, sorry to cut you off, David. The most experienced traditional search fund investors always encourage their searchers in this way. They say, find the absolute best business you can find and be prepared to pay a lot for it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No. That was it. It's like I've. It's just it's a lifetime of experience. You see where traditionally the success is, and in real estate, the success is in higher value, higher, better locations.
Yes.
Maybe the cash flow is not so high, but it's where the profits are. They're in this triple A type of product, and you're just alluding to the fact that when you go out and buy a business, do something similar. Don't buy something that's failing, unless you can turn it around, unless you've got a particular skill set.
So I think that number one, you're right. And number two, I think that what you just said will make most people miss their opportunity. And what I mean is that real estate is very developed, right? And, if I wanted to make a video that would get a lot of clicks right now, I would say something like, 99% of businesses aren't worth buying. Here's the 10 reasons why they all suck. Okay. And why everyone's lying to you. That's a great video. I should go make that. But here's the point.
We're already going to post that.
Yeah.
We've got it now.
But here's the point is that like when I was, first talking to my editor, Tucker Max, he was like, all right, who's your target market? I'm like, all right, listen, I already know this conversation's going to go, Tucker, like they don't exist right now. And he was like, not starting a business starting a business is what makes an entrepreneur. Like what you're saying doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, do you know like EO, like Entrepreneurs Organization? It's like them, but like without their business. He's like, that makes no sense. I'm like, you know what real estate investors are? And he was like, yeah. And I said, you know how like before Rich Dad, Poor Dad, they didn't like gather? And like now we say real estate investor and you know what that is? I was like, that's my market and they don't gather yet. And I could tell he just was looking at me like I was another, author that like didn't know what his target market was. Like he didn't quite get it yet, he got it. He got it by the end,
Yeah.
And then ironically, sold his company to a couple of acquisition entrepreneurs who read, buy, then build, who I was just with. And so anyway, but the trick I think is that, and I mean, no disrespect to, business brokers or anything out there, but the market is, completely unregulated. And business brokers, Clark, kind of what you said earlier, it's almost like a real estate agent is all of a sudden going to sell you, a manufacturing company. And it's like, okay. And it's like that no one understands how to package these companies. They don't understand
Right.
what's important about them. They don't really know how to put like a real deck together. And the sellers don't have, you know, any kind of professional reporting because they don't have a board of directors. They don't have people they
Right.
have to report to. Everything's in their head. You know, we're asking for, you know, and like I love these buyers that, you know, they're like, "Oh, would you please send me, you know, a cost accounting by SKU by month over the last 5 years so that I can run a regression analysis and figure out the predictive, you know, index
Yeah.
of the revenue." And I'm just like, dude, there's no predictive index of the revenue. Like this is just go fucking work. Like, and you push. That's it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
and the seller's like, what are
I
they
love it.
asking? What are they asking for this for? You know, it's just like it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, I get it. And so there's a disconnect between, you know, really being able to pierce through and get the information you need and being able to see what's actually there. Okay. There are a number. And so what I'm trying to say is that the business model of business brokerage is sign as many sellers as you can and launch to market with half-ass incomplete information that is non-standard and non-regulated and no one anything. I love those opportunities because most fair weather buyers, which most buyers are, will not actually be able to pierce through to that broker, prove themselves quickly, and be able to gather the information that no one else can gather because the package sucks. So
Yeah.
it could be
Yeah.
an A plus location,
Yeah.
and you
Just
can't tell because the package looks like a piece of shit, and it's
yeah.
sitting
Yeah.
on Biz Buy Sell or wherever
I
else,
got it.
Right.
surrounded
Yep.
by other pieces of shit. And like I have so many people in Acquisition Lab that were just able to find a deal and like uncover like, oh my God, like here's
Yeah.
this. And I was just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
whoa. And like you can't see it because it just looks terrible. So
Yeah.
it all looks so bad, but when you spend the time to find and engineer the deal, and every business that's listed for sale, that seller is ready to sell. And
Yeah.
everyone spends a lot of time looking for off-market deals because we learned it in real estate. But
Gotta
guess
do
Yeah.
off
what? The
market.
number one reason why off-market deals fall apart is because the seller never wanted to sell anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, can I tell a quick
Yeah.
story while we're on
Yeah.
this? It just occurred to me. So after Buy Then Build came out, so I lived in London for you know, a little bit, and it was one of these where Tantor Media reached out to me and wanted me to they wanted to buy my audiobook, and I said, okay, I will do it, but I know a bit about the entertainment industry. And what happens is a lot of times you can get the money for a project, but only if there's some certain people associated with the project. So I went back to them and said, look, I looked it up, and there are these three people who have all won more awards for, you know, spoken books than anyone else. And as long as you can get one of those three, I will sell you the rights to my book. And they wrote back and said, Walker, all of those you've picked are British, and your book is squarely American. We disagree. And I said,
Well,
good save, good save.
yeah.
Can you
That's
imagine if Buy Then Build was spoken in British? Anyway,
could
in English,
I can.
English accent. Yeah,
I
yeah.
can, but I wouldn't take it as seriously.
Right.
Can we re-record this episode in that accent, Walker? Just the whole
No,
thing. Let's just rewind
no,
it and go back to that
no.
accent. Walker, take it. We're going to be respectful of your time, my friend. I appreciate it. And tell us a little bit about what's next, man. We've talked a lot about Buy Then Build. That's one of many things you have going on
Sure.
in your world. Kind of take us out on what's next for you.
Yeah.
And also too, we want to make sure that anyone listening that is probably has that mindset of getting started. Obviously, going and reading the book Buy Then Build is the first step, but then the Acquisition Lab. So how can they find out more about it? But tell us first, what's next for you personally?
So I've been investing in the private markets, right, since probably 2013, right after I sold my first company. So I was buying, you know, so that I could manage actively, but I was also investing in other companies and real estate and eventually credit funds and other private assets. A lot of actually film and entertainment, video games and stuff as well, IP. And you know what happened was in February last year, I wrote an email to my email list, which sort of was we send an email out you know, at the buythenbuild.com address to, you know, about 54,000 people every Sunday, and we've done it for 5-6 years. It's like 2,500 words. It's like a mini chapter every single week. And like, we don't ask for anything. We just sort of say like, hey, here's a lesson, here's the thing, whatever. And last February, I sent an email that said, listen, I know I'm the buy then build guy, but like, surprise, I also invest in real estate. And like, here's actually my A team. And we have this great project that I'm personally investing in. And I've got more money with these guys than anyone else. Like I work with them on as a GP in some projects. This one I'm not. And I said, so I'm investing my own money. And if you guys want to join us, it's about $1,350,000.
Yeah.
And full disclosure, if you come in and we fill this, they're going to move me to the GP side. So I'll make more money than you. But even if you don't, I don't care. I'm already in it.
Yeah.
And we raised $4.5 million in 4 hours.
I remember that email. I remember getting that.
Okay.
I remember that email.
Yeah. It was the best thing I ever wrote. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I
just remember noting at the time, I remember like Walker's pivoting.
It's not a pivot. It was an expansion. It's an expansion.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right?
It wasn't a pivot. You're exactly right.
Yeah. So
Walker is expanding his offerings.
It's the difference between being active and passive. And a couple of things always happen, which is for years, everyone was like, Walker, what are you investing in? What's the business you're buying? What's the whatever? And so when that happened, I kind of had this big aha moment. And now, looking back just over the last 10 months right now, we raised another $20 million for a manufacturing facility in Dallas. We've got, 700 oil wells. We've got, a ground up development, largest timber building in the mass timber building in the world. We've got credit funds with 8 assets in it. We've got, all these things that I'm putting my own money in. And I've just got this crazy pipeline. And so what's really awesome is that I'm realizing that, this is what people want from me. They're like, Walker, where's the offering that's like, hey, I'm Walker Deibel. We're going to raise a bunch of money and go out and buy, 20 different small businesses and just grow them all. And the problem with that is that I'm continue to work on it. But the truth is that, at first glance, it seems like it's going to be awesome. I mean, I wrote this book. I'm out there doing it. I'm doing all these things. But the truth is that once you scale that, I mean, this is a truly entrepreneur-centric model, period.
Right.
Okay? That's why I like it. That's why it makes so much sense. The minute you do that, it becomes an investor-centric model.
Yeah.
And what do the investors own? The investors own 20 single-engine aircraft flying 1 mile off the ground with all brand new pilots.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally what everyone's asking me for. And I'm like, that takes a lot. Like, we can do that, but and I might be able to get it done, and I'm working on it, but I'm very, very specific about how that would go down. And the truth is that, based on the J curve and everything else we just talked about, if we're going to raise money and put in professional teams and really grow something that's like to 100 million, the best way to do it is by buying much larger institutional assets.
Yeah.
And, I've got a concept vehicle that I call Wealth Stack. And it's just sort of like, do you want, cash flow or appreciation or asymmetric upside and, all the rest of it. And it's just, so it's all about building a portfolio in private assets, right? Which you guys do as well.
Yeah. What you're saying is like, what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah. Right. And it's also in life, you have your job and you invest in the stock market, right? But the truth is once you're in the private capital markets, you have a business that you own and operate, and you invest in private assets.
Got it.
Like it's the analogy. That's it.
It makes total sense to me.
Exactly. And
it
so
makes
we're
total
and
sense.
So that's called Build Wealth. You can go to buildwealth.com if you want to get access to our deals. But so we've launched a new newsletter called Wealth Stack Weekly. I've got the M&A insights that we launch every Sunday. So what's next for me? Guys, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah,
right?
I can tell,
It's
man.
just sort of like, I feel like ultimately what I'm looking for is I want to build a community of like 1,000 investors that want to invest like 50 to 250,000 1 to 4 times a year. And then we can just go out and raise $5 million every single month and just take out these assets and J curve them to the next level, right? Like, that's what I think is just really going to take, buy then build to sort of like really and allow people to participate together, right? So you take all these people in acquisition lab and just, say like, how do we actually work together and build our own damn family office?
Right.
That's what I think is so cool.
You're not
But
wrong. We
yeah,
buy
thanks.
businesses. So what do we do with the money that we make from businesses? We
That's right.
invest it, and so this is just a natural. Like you've already built the credibility with the people who own businesses who are now making lots of money,
That's right.
and they want to do more stuff with you. It's so obvious.
Yeah, well, thanks. It wasn't obvious to me, but it happened.
Well, it
And
seems
I'm
obvious to
slow. I
me.
go slowly. You know, I like to go really slowly and get things right. So hopefully that's what happened. But you know, so it's also you know, I almost bought a company earlier this year. It was about 17 million. I'm not going to buy it, but like the last offer I made on a business was, you know, just to throw this out there at closing of the podcast, the last offer I made was 180 million. I made that offer.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
they couldn't take it because it was too low of a multiple, but like it was a 7.25, right?
Oh my
But it
God.
was fair. I mean, it was a fair offer. They just couldn't
Yeah.
take it. You know, the thing is I'm now in a position where I can do that. And so,
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
amazing.
buying a $2 million business and owning it for 10 years is like I've been doing that for 19 years.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I can do that in my sleep, you know, and it's like I've done it so many times that, you know, if I really want, like when you buy, I said earlier, if you want to make $1 to $5 million, go and buy a business.
Yep.
Period. Right? That's it. But what you're saying, David, is like if you want to go from, 2 million in net worth to 20 million in net worth, you've got to be in the private markets.
Yeah.
And
That's
so it's
right.
like we can assemble that team and build that together to, you know, just to do it together.
The
And
analogy I'll use is that buying and holding real estate for most people is not scalable. They can handle up to 15, 20 deals,
great.
maybe
Yeah.
30, but not 50. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You can't own 50 and manage 50 single family homes yourself. It's
Yeah.
not scalable. You're just going to be running around going crazy.
Well,
What you're saying is you need to hitch your wagon to a bigger boat that's not going to look like this idea of owning 20 businesses in a small fund. Walker's
yeah,
Fund A and Fund
that's right.
B. You can't grow like that. That's what you're saying.
I think there's a ceiling, you know. Yeah, there was a time in my life where I couldn't imagine how I was going to get $1 million, and now it's the
Yeah.
numbers just there's zeros on it. So what I haven't shared this yet. I'll say it right now. That my number one real estate partners here in St. Louis, we they roll up and develop entire neighborhoods. Like it's
Yeah.
not a lot of one-off projects. It's
Right.
rehabbing entire neighborhoods. And like it's a lot of fun, and I really have spent a lot of time in the room with them. And essentially, you know, they're about 150 million AUM right now, and if
Yeah.
we just
Wow.
continue to build out what is already funded, you know,
Yep.
they're going to be about 350, 400 million. I'm actually buying in to the partnership level, and I'm going to be in a position here in short order where I have multiple millions of dollars invested in this company. And what's happening is I'm basically buying, then building the real
Yeah.
estate company,
Yeah.
right? And that's going to become the only real estate that I raise for because I'm in the company. And like
Right.
Yeah.
my brother-in-law is working on one of our assets, and like it's like okay, this is my team, let's go. So
Yeah.
I'm buying right into it, and we're going to grow. I want to grow that to $1 billion over the next 5 years. That's AUM, and that's just the real estate side. But so
That,
that's what I'm wanting to do, because now
that's
it's like now we can all go together and rehab this whole neighborhood and like go like
Yeah.
that.
Well,
We're doing the same ourselves.
it
Yeah.
makes sense because then you can, investing with like I think a lot of people listening to this can feel the passion through the microphone. Like I can feel your passion, like and something and it's contagious, right? It's like, hold on, what is Walker doing? Okay, he's gentrifying entire neighborhoods. Like that sounds pretty cool. Maybe I should come along for the ride. So, I feel your passion, my friend, and I feel it. It's contagious. Walker, with that being said, man, we could spend another 2 or 3 hours going on to the next thing that you have going on and the next thing going on. Unfortunately, everyone on this planet has ADD, and we lose, we lose our attention span after 12 minutes. So, with that, man, I want you to know we appreciate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm late for my next call, actually.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll leave it at that. And Walker, it was buildwealth.com, right? If they want to go.
Buythenbuild.com, acquisitionlab.com, buildwealth.com. I've got a YouTube channel with 300 videos all on buying small businesses. Please check it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow me on LinkedIn, all the rest of it.
We'll
Yeah,
leave, we'll leave it
well,
at
I
that,
think
man.
you can all see now why my wife is a super fan and she's in like what cohort 50, 40, 44 or
Yeah.
something like that. Walker, go to your next call. Thank
You
you
too,
so much
gentlemen.
for
Thank
this,
you so
man.
much.
This,
This was great.
I cannot wait to meet you again sometime soon, okay?
Let's go skiing. Thanks,
Yeah.
David.
I got to see
On
the
your
skiing
life.
thing. Cheers,
See you
guys.
later.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, boys.
Bye, guys.